So let's move to another thing. What is the essence of leadership?
Well, fundamentally, let's start with profit making. Fundamentally, most psychologists view leadership as emotional, which is getting people inspired, but it's not the primary. The primary is intellectual, which is what is your vision of something that will work? That's thinking. And what is your vision of how you're going to take steps to achieve that, which is a tremendous amount of thinking, problem solving, planning, and work. Once you figure that out, you can say, okay, how can we get people motivated to go along with this? But the primary is intellectual, and it's not, the leadership theories are very poor because they don't come to grips with that as the primary. So getting people motivated to do the wrong thing, let's say make a lousy product, we're really motivated, we're going to work hard 50 hours a week to make this product, but it's the wrong product and nobody wants it.
Right.
So what's the point of motivation to do the wrong thing? So leaders have to start by saying, what are we going to do that's going to work? Then we worry about motivation. So now leadership involves lots of other things like picking good people, setting
Which
up
is
the
very, very hard.
Very hard. Setting the moral compass of the company explicitly and enforcing it. Organizing the company. How do you make the divisions? How do you deal with competition? How do you get money? How do you do training? How do you do performance appraisal? So there's many, many things, but still they're very intellectual. It's a very, very, very hard work to start and run a successful company, especially if it's going to last more than a year, and a lot of them don't. So it's a very, very difficult task. Now, I won't get into military and public. That's a different cup of tea, but it's still a very, very complex process.
All right. And what is prime movers are successful entrepreneurs? What are the main traits you observe in successful entrepreneurs?
Well, in my book, The Prime Movers, I don't know if it's still even available.
Yeah, I have seen it on Amazon.
The Prime Movers. I talk about independent vision, which we just talked about. What's going to work for this? An active mind, constant thinking, inside the square, outside the square, talking to other people, looking for contradictions, having arguments, having competence in key areas, like a lot of CEOs need mathematical competence, among other things. Competence in reading markets, competence in understanding consumers, competence nowadays, especially in the whole field of software and robots and computers and communication. Another one is being action-driven. They're not just thinkers, like a lot of academics. Oh, I got an idea here. They want to put it into action. And if they don't put it into action, then it's just a dead idea.
Okay.
Another one is passion. And by passion, I mean egoistic passion, selfish love of the work and the product. You love what you're doing. You love, for example, you love cars. You love certain kinds of software. You love clothing. You love making food and selling it. You love supermarket idea. You love hamburgers. So selfish love of product. Now, this comes to be, you have to, of course, love the customer, because without them you would go bankrupt.
Yeah.
But if you want to survive and enjoy your life, you got to enjoy the way you're making the money and the kinds of customers and the kinds of products. So that's another one. Another one is love of ability in others. Not too many organizations can run with one person. It's a pretty small company if it's just you. So you have to love people of ability who can work with you and share your passion. And if you're threatened by people of ability, you're doomed. So you got to you love finding people like you that can think and argue and come up with ideas. Otherwise, not going to make it. Another one is virtue. If you're not going to offer value for value, if you're a crook, sooner or later you're going to get caught. Your business is going to fail, and you're going to end up in prison. So if you can't offer value for value, it's not going to work. So what does that mean? Rationality, honesty, integrity. Justice is very important. If you're not just to your employees, they'll leave. If you're not just with your customers, they'll find other businessmen or businesswomen to work with. So independent thinking. If you blindly follow the crowd, they might take you over the cliff. So you've got to be aware of competition, but you've got to think, this is where I want to go. You've got to love productivity as a virtue. So all the objectivist virtues are extremely critical to success in your organization. So those are the main ideas in the prime movers.
All right. Thanks for sharing that. Very interesting. So let's move ahead with another subject. How do we make the conscious and subconscious work together? Could you illustrate how it works in practice?
Well, the important thing is you understand the difference, and it's amazing many psychologists don't. So look at it this way. The subconscious is storage. So imagine an Amazon warehouse full of 1 million products down below in the basement or in a dark warehouse somewhere, okay? It's stored and it's there, and you get your subconscious filled by experiences, right? By learning. Now, subconscious is very big. It's got most of what you've ever experienced. So you can think of it superficially as 100 trillion connections, probably more than that.
Wow.
Now, here's the problem. How are you going to act? What if you tried to act on 100 million ideas, 100 trillion ideas at the same time? You would be paralyzed or go insane. So you need a selector or driver. Now in Amazon, the conscious mind is your order. I want to order these 3 books and some hand lotion. So you consciously put in the order to the warehouse. The warehouse sends you what you want, but it doesn't send you what you don't want. Otherwise, it would send you 1 trillion things. That would be ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
So think of it this way. The subconscious is storage, and it's relatively passive, not 100%, but relatively. The conscious mind is your prime mover. It puts in orders, it directs what you want to do. So imagine a conversation with somebody. Your conscious mind listens to what's being said, and your subconscious mind feeds you the meaning of the words automatically. But you got to put together the combination to have this conversation with the person, because every conversation is different. So your conscious mind has to be in focus, otherwise you can't have the conversation. And tries to understand what's going on, and then directs the conversation through exchange with the person. You try to get understanding. Okay, so conscious mind can't hold very much at the same time. It can only hold about 7 separate things at the same time. If you try to overload the conscious mind, you go blank. You go blank. You can't. Somebody tries to give you 17. Imagine you're a tennis player and you hit a cue balls, and the pro gives you 10 things you did wrong. Okay, I've seen this happen. What's going to happen? You won't understand any of them. None of them. You'll go completely blank.
Yeah.
A good tennis pro says, here's one thing to work on right now. Do this. your conscious mind can't hold at the same time too many things. So it's the driver, but it's also has limited capacity, so it has to decide what's going to be paid attention to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a teamwork. If you only had the subconscious mind, you would die because you could never direct action.
Okay.
If you only had the conscious mind, you would die because you can't store anything. There's no stored knowledge for you to act on. So as soon as you think, it's gone. So you're also dead. So it's a partnership. Storage plus purpose. Plus purpose and thought. Working together.
So, yes. So let's say spirituality is very important. Do you believe in the methods they use, such as mindfulness, for example?
Oh, mindfulness. Well, here's the problem in psychology. There's lots of movements with exciting words. This happens every 2 years. They get a new. Now, the problem with mindfulness is that if you look at all the definitions, I counted 18 definitions. You can't have a concept that means 18 things.
Okay, right.
Mostly it seems to be another word for meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not against meditation. It's a way of relaxing. If it works for you, it doesn't work for me. But if it works for you, fine, use meditation. And it's focused very much on the here and now, maybe on a key word, maybe on a vision of a waterfall or whatever, and it makes you relax. If you want to do that, fine.
Mm-hmm.
But none of the definitions of mindfulness mention thinking, which is very interesting. None of them mention actual thinking.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, meditation is fine if you want to cool out, but you can't live that way all the time. You got to get out of meditation and start acting.
Mm-hmm.
So, mindfulness is a thing now. It's a fad. Hundreds of companies have opened who are mindfulness trainers, all doing different things and getting paid for it. Okay, it's a free country, but it's going to have to do better than that to, if they can train people in relaxation, I'm all for it, but it's too limited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
You want to live, you want to use your mind, you can't just do meditation, you have to do conceptual thinking, and that's hard work.
Mm-hmm.
Different cup of tea.
Yeah. Great. So what is introspection and why only few people are good at it?
Introspection is looking inwards by volitional choice at your internal mental processes and the contents of your mind. So if I say to you, describe your mother, okay, you got to think inwards. Okay, bring up my memories of mother. Or if I want to say, you look angry, tell me what kind of thought processes are in the back of your mind that cause you to feel anger, and I'll push you to come up with some kind of belief that something was unjust that made you angry. So introspection is the work of focusing inwards and identifying what's going on in there. And emotions are an obvious benefit here, because emotions are automatic based on the subconscious. They are automatic. People don't realize this, but they experience value judgments all day long, every day.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't pay attention to most of them because they're not important enough. They usually pay attention to the stronger emotions. But your subconscious is always making judgments based on subconscious values and beliefs. Mm-hmm. So your role, if you want to understand yourself, is to say, what is going on in there that is making me feel this way? And every emotion has a pattern. Anger is always based on some kind of appraisal of injustice, whether right or wrong. Mm-hmm. It's an automatic appraisal. Love is an appraisal that if it's the person, this person has wonderful values that you share. Fear is based on an emotional appraisal that you're threatened physically by harm. Anxiety is based on an emotional appraisal that your self-esteem is being threatened by something. You have to figure out, well, what is it? What's causing that? So pride is based on, legitimate pride, based on a subconscious value that I've achieved something positive in my character by taking actions based on my value judgments, and so on and so forth. So this is a very important skill, because if you don't use it, you can conclude that you're possessed by demons or some horrible brain disorder. You could have a brain disorder. That's a medical issue. You could, but let's assume it's not. You could assume you're being manipulated by an unconscious brain, and you have no control, no ability to understand it. You're just a helpless victim in life. This is terrible. So if you think of it this way, all emotions have subconscious judgments behind them. And if you do have a brain problem, okay, you need a specialist to get that. And sometimes you do. You can be depressed due to something wrong with your hormones. Not your fault. You can also be depressed by wrong values. So you have to figure out that.
Right.
So introspection is a tremendously important thing as a way of understanding yourself and understanding that there are things that are affecting you that you can identify, and if it's not directly physical things, you can change, because you can change bad ideas. Although it may be difficult, you can change bad ideas.
Free will.
Yeah, I mean, it might take work. Like, I had a client when I did therapy that felt guilty masturbating. And I said, well, what's wrong with that? Mm-hmm. He said, well, if I was a real man, I could get girls every night. I said, no, you can't. What are you doing? Where did you get that from? How did you get that definition of a real man? That's ridiculous. I said, for boys and people, masturbation is a normal outlet, and there's nothing wrong with it, and nor is it wrong for women. And it's ridiculous to think you can just walk into a bar every night and get a woman. Why would you even want to? It's not even meaningful. So interesting, in this particular case, it had a huge effect on reducing guilt. Now, sometimes it's much harder to do that, but in this case, it had an immediate benefit. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you need a therapist. You mentioned Ellen Kenner as a great therapist. Sometimes you need a therapist to see what's going on and get rid of unearned guilt. Mm-hmm. So there's earned guilt too, but that's different.
All right, let's go to the last topic. Why is it so hard to change habits? And could you give us some recommendations on how to be more effective?
Okay, some habits are easy to change and some are not. So I'll give you an example of both. When I was in college, I smoked for about a year. Then I realized it was hurting my sinuses and causing infections. Mm-hmm. So I stopped the next day. Now, how did I do that? I defined smoking as something that's hurting me, as an enemy. And I didn't have any problem giving it up, because I defined in my mind consciously, this is poison for you. Now, I'll give you an example 35 years later. I was getting sinus infections from other causes, not smoking. And I figured out that it was caused by sugar, which is unusual. Most ENT doctors never heard of this. But I was finally diagnosed at a clinic with something called sugar intolerance, not diabetes. The sugar makes the fungus. The sugar makes the fungus grow in my sinuses.
What's the difference between diabetes and sugar intolerance?
Diabetes is your blood sugar's all messed up, and it's cause you blindness and heart disease and brain damage and amputation of your limbs. But that wasn't the issue. It was sinus infections only. Okay, so sugar intolerance, not diabetes. So I did the same thing again. I redefined sugar as poison. Okay. And gave it up. because I didn't want to be poisoned. So to me, it was, now I do miss it. I'm allowed myself 1 teaspoon of sugar, of ice cream a night. 1 teaspoon. That's it. That's it for sugar. And, but it was easy to give up because I didn't want to be poisoned. Now let's take something that's harder. Let's say if you're a binge eater, and the binge eating is tied to anxiety reduction and a whole method of living of buying stuff, storing them in the refrigerator, eating one thing, then eating another thing, and it comforts you, and you know you're getting too fat and obese, but you don't want to stop, and it's torture. You have nothing else going for you. Some binge eaters have to have stomach reduction operations because they can't fix it. Other people can go on diets and stick with them. It's not easy. Sure. I think in a case like this, or alcoholism is another one. Alcoholism is very, very hard to cure because it affects your brain. Once you're an alcoholic, it affects the way your brain works and all your pleasure centers. It's not just psychological anymore. It affects all your pleasure centers. And then your whole mental apparatus is switching. So it's very, very difficult. I don't have any solutions for those kind of very serious things. There are treatment centers. Everyone doesn't get cured. Some people do. But it's so automatized, number one, and it's so deeply ingrained in your brain chemistry that in those cases, giving up can be excruciatingly difficult. Wow. I don't have any magic solutions.
It depends of the person, actually, right?
But it's but you have to really, really be committed. Even though you find it torture, you have to really be committed. See, I don't think a lot of people who overeat really want to be cured. They like the eat. They like it. Or alcoholics, I don't think all of them want to be cured. I like the stage I'm in, the feeling I get from the alcohol. So it's very hard to get them to even want what they need. So anyway, I have no magic solutions, but your subconscious and then your brain chemistry can be involved. So habits, some habits can be easy to set up. I have a habit, I brush my teeth 3 times a day because I'm retired, I work at home. And it's easy to do. And I don't have to go through torture to do it, but I've set it up that way. I exercise every day. I set it up as a habit. So that was not hard. I walk the dog every day, that's a habit. So some things are easy because I'm committed to them for my own self-interest. Some things are much harder to do, and so again, I have no magic, but if your starting point has to be, I gave a course on this, I don't know if ARI sells the tape, it was a joint course with John Dennis on habit change. I don't know if anyone in here interested. Habit change.
Yes, I've seen it.
4-lecture course you can order from Ayn Rand Institute.
Yes.
And it talks about these things that might be of help to some people. But I think the fundamental takeaway is you can't always use free will directly for a lot of habits. It's too much to ask of your subconscious. You've got to go through stages. Sometimes it's a very fast stage and you can do it. But a lot of times you have to go through stages and they can be torturous. So you have to figure out what do I have to do to prepare for fixing this? And it's going to be very hard. So no magic.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, so what message will you give to the young people who want to study psychology?
Be aware there are about 50 divisions of specialties in the American Psychological Association. So like military, child, industrial, social personality, addiction, religion, political, clinical, and each of it has its own people and gurus. So I don't even pretend to keep up, but I think having objectivism as a base, what consciousness is, the capacity for thinking, forming concepts, the need for clear concepts, the knowledge that you have free will, that it's an axiom, the need for clear concepts. Obviously, I like my work, and I have a website, edwinlocke.com. My favorite psychologist, one of the great psychologists who is thought to be great, but also deserves to be called great, which is not always the case, Albert Bandura. I agree with him 95%. He's written 2 earth-shaking books that I would recommend. I don't recommend too many psychologists. You have to judge for yourself. There's a lot of fuzzy concepts, a lot of sloppy research, a lot of failure to introspect, a lot of wanting to be the big shot, a lot of overgeneralization, doing one study and claiming you're a genius and publicizing it. And for many of them it works. They do get to be gurus. And even though your studies might be refuted a year later, they succeed, but I'm not that kind of person. So I don't do that. So even gurus, beware, they can come out with this great book that everyone cites, and the research is refuted 2 years later because it's premature. They come out too soon. So,
all right.
Be alert, skeptical, but I want to be skeptical. It's too negative. Be very cautious when you read stuff in psychology to see if it's really replicated, see if the concepts are clear, see if they really seem to know what they're talking about, see if they believe in consciousness, and don't prematurely think somebody's a genius because everyone else said so.
Right, judge it by yourself. So thank you so much for your time. I'm gonna put the links here, so if you want more information, to request information, or to get more information about Dr. Locke, go to his page, edwinlocke.com. You can also find in Amazon. I'm gonna put the links below. We have been talking about different topics on his books, such as The Illusion of Determinism, also The Prime Movers is another book.
And my romance book, very important.
Yeah, The Selfish Path to Romance with Ellen Kenner.
Yeah, it's the best book on, I mean, I'm being conceited a little bit, but it's the best book on romance, I think, ever.
Yeah, exactly. I'm reading it, and I had the opportunity to have an interview also with Ellen Kenner, and it was amazing. I will put the links below so you can check it.
It's the only book that avoids altruism as the basis for love, which usually means the woman sacrificing to the man. And it's the only book that gets away from narcissism, which is usually the man is the beneficiary, and the two often go together, making both people miserable. So this is mutual egoism, mutual self-interest. So I think it's important. And I think my free will book, again, being a little conceited, but it's if you talk about books devoted only to the topic of free will, it's the only book, it's the best book out there in the field. Of course, Ayn Rand and Leonard Peikoff wrote about the theory that I'm using, but my book's the only one only on free will, and it gets into all of their points and some additional material that I've added in. So I think and it's also easy reading because it's only 150 pages.
Outstanding, amazing.
So I think that could be useful for people in psychology.